Hey guys, it is Saab Talk Live, the show for people who love their Saabs by a couple of guys who love their Saabs. I'm Lee Kelso.
Mark Romisher. Welcome to the show this week. We have a special guest with us that we're going to be talking about a little bit about Saabs and about why he happens to be in a hotel room, but more about that in just a moment.
Yeah, so you're right. He is kind of a special guest. A lot of guys know Gary Reider. He is a retired mechanic, 55 years. He's been hanging out and working on Saabs. And let's welcome him to the program right away here. And hey, Gary, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for being invited here.
Oh, you bet, you bet. So tell us, what are you doing there in a hotel room in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm sitting here in West Hazelton, which is near the little town of Weatherly, where they run an annual hill climb. It's a Pennsylvania Hill Climb Association event, and it's sanctioned through SCCA for insurance purposes. And basically, it's 100 and some people who like to drive their cars fast and avoid rocks and trees. And we start one car at a time. That car will get so far up a hill, and they'll start another car 30 seconds behind it, and so on and so on. And we all cross the finish line. We all gather up at the end of the hill climb, and we'll run 50 cars back, and then we'll start another 50 cars up the hill. I've been doing it. I started when I was 21 in 1968 and went on for a couple of years and then stopped for 40 years. Go ahead with your program.
Well, hey, we're watching you right now. So this is your Saab 900, and this looks like just an absolute gas. How fast do you wind up going up these hills?
Oops. Oh, yes.
Are you still with us, Gary? I hope so.
What's that?
You're still with us? We're watching you drive up the hill here in your Saab 900.
Yes. I don't know what's happening here. You had control of this, right?
Yeah, I sure do. We're watching you race up a hill right now. And that looks like an absolute gas. So you've done all kinds of racing. You've done all kinds of racing, though, not just the hill climb, right?
Well, I've done some track racing. Some of you may know the 24 Hours of Lemon series, which is supposed to be $500 junk cars. And, poor man's racing, and it's endurance racing. They run a few 24-hour events, but mostly what we did was would be like a 9-hour day, 2 days back to back. And we'd run 700 miles on a weekend on a Saab 900 and, $300 worth of gas. And we had lots of fun, usually 4 drivers, that sort of thing. Anyway, so we did that. I did that for a number of years, mostly with a bunch of younger kids, and they had the enthusiasm. So all we needed was enough money to. It got a little expensive. You had entry fees and everything else, and you'd spend. The team would spend $3,000-4,000 for the privilege of going out and beating our car to death. And but we ran a Saab 900, and it was fairly reliable. We eventually got the power up to the point that we could occasionally break a gearbox, sometimes over the weekend. So we would always bring an engine hoist and another gearbox, and we got down to the point we engine and trans in and out 4 hours.
Boom! That's pretty quick.
Wow.
So we always hoped to break during the end of a day. If you broke in practice day, you were good, and that sort of thing. But it gets old after a while. But it was a lot of fun. And,
well, we asked you to come today so that we could put you to the test. 55 years as a mechanic. You've worked on Saabs all the way from the 2-strokes to forward. So if people have a question or a problem with their Saab, let's see if you can come up with the answer. So people will be jumping in and asking some questions. Now, I found one earlier today in one of the forums, in one of the Facebook groups. Let me get this up for you here. This guy's asking. There we all are. This guy's asking, what spark plug should he be using for his B205 engine in a 9.3? He's getting a misfire And he's asking, could it be that, the plugs, or could it be the cassette, the ignition cassette? You got any ideas on that one?
So,
Well,
go ahead.
well, am I answering this or is Mark?
Jump in, either one.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Gary.
I'll be quick. My version is you start with the cheap stuff. So you put a set of good spark plugs in the thing first, and then if that doesn't cure it, then you start looking at the coil pack, I would suppose. And we talked about plugs. I'm a big fan of NGK plugs, so I'm thinking that car probably needs what, BCP R70Ss or maybe 60Ss. Mark probably thinks probably similar to that.
Yeah, I usually go for the platinum tip plugs and the NGKs for most of the Saab 4-cylinders.
Okay. Well, there we differ a little bit, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that I know some guys will run coppers because they'll just replace them every oil change because they're cheap enough. But for longevity, I've been running platinum spark plugs in my B235R motors, which are a little bit newer than the B205s.
Right.
But I have found that I've gotten the best results so far with platinum tipped plugs in the 4-cylinders. Of course, that does vary from engine to engine.
Yeah.
So why are these Saabs so fussy about spark plugs? Guys in the C900 world and my world say you don't run anything except the NGKs. Why is that?
Oh, I've heard the same thing, and quite honestly, I mean, I've had experiences. I've had people, I just put plugs in my car and it runs like crap. And they bring the car in, you pull the plugs out, and there'll be some Bosch plug, and it'll have 2 electrodes, or it'll be this or that, or this one costs $7 a piece. And a lot of times you replace the plugs with the common and proper NGK plug, and it all goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they fire better even with lower voltage coming out of the coil or something like that, I don't know. But I mean, I've seen issues where the culprit is a plug that looks fairly new. So I just, for me, use what the factory says. But neither here nor there. I mean, it's just the way it is.
And I kind of wanted to add that a little bit. I've had experience with my 2005 95 ARC. And back when I was doing performance upgrades, I had gotten the intercooler, the upgraded downpipe. And when I had a tune actually performed on the vehicle, I was unaware, but the tune on the vehicle caused some issues with the engine misfiring and just misbehaving. I found out it was the spark plugs that were incorrect. I actually had to go to a step colder plug for it to run properly. And that's because just the tune made the engine run a little bit more aggressively. So I've actually had that situation where I've had to go to a colder plug to actually supplement the tunes so the engine will run right. So I've actually have experienced that myself.
Yeah, the other thing is when you start running real high boost pressures, you really need to get the 39 thousandths to 1 millimeter gap that they recommend for those plugs. You need to tighten the gap up a little bit on them to get them to fire properly. You can, I know guys that run way in the high 20s and stuff, and you make the gap a little smaller and you lose the miss.
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, well, there's a lot of pressure in there. You're almost. They talk about almost blowing out the flame. It's one of those deals. It's crazy. I mean, I'm not the engineer, but you hear these stories, and I've seen it. It works. So,
well, give me an example. Excuse me. Mark, you might have to take over here.
No problem. Go ahead and give us an example where you've gone, because of course we have technical difficulties, and sometimes we have human difficulties too.
That's right.
But anyway, I would say go ahead and give us an example of about basically upgrading the spark plug or something like that. Where this actually, have you seen this work out in the field on other vehicles too, Gary?
I'm sorry.
Have you seen this work out in other vehicles too, besides the 900 and other ones?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, in my air-cooled Volkswagen days, we used Bosch plugs all the time. But,
gotcha.
with Saabs, we used Bosch plugs on the 2-strokes, and then now today you can't get much of anything, so we switched over to NGK makes a couple plugs that still fit, and some people, they're 18 millimeter thread on those on 2-strokes, so some people have actually used sleeves and they go down to 14 millimeter plugs, and then all of a sudden there's a larger array of spark plug and heat ranges you can get. But
gotcha.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, well, I haven't been day-to-day active pretty much in the last 10 years as far as repair work, so a lot of this is, so I remember it this way or that way. Maybe I'm embellishing a little one way or another. You never know, but it's just I don't know if I want to work in that many cars every day anymore. But
well,
I don't know. I believe in what the factory says, and when you start chasing after problems, you got to go really back to basics, and you start changing a couple of things at once. You never know what the devil you did to fix it. And, I don't know.
That's a good jumping off point, Gary. When guys today are working on their cars, what's a key mistake you see them make? I assume just assuming this is going to fix it, and now you've got lots of variables in the mix, right?
Well, you do, and we're working on older cars. If you're talking C900s and older, oh my gosh, you got a lot of those cars have a lot of there's brittle connections. The LH system cars, you get a couple bad wires. You get the pin's been taken in and out so many times, plugged off and on terminals, and the pin gets pushed out or the pin gets damaged. You get intermittent electrical connections. I mean, it can make yourself crazy. You got to go to basics. If the car doesn't start, bingo. Where are we going to go? Does it have fuel? Does it have spark? Does it have compression? And there's lots of stuff. I can think of a young fellow whose name will remain silent, who's been beating his brains out for weeks, and he's had problems. The car doesn't cold start, starts and dies, starts and dies, starts and dies. And then recently he's changed the turbo, and then he started saying, well, now I'm hearing these whistling noises when I get on the boost, but I still have boost, but it's whistling. And I said, well, you've got a torn hose, or you've got a slit in one of your pressure hoses. And if you think about it, with a car like that, in the intake stream from the mass meter on a 2.4 or 2.2 LH motor, that all that intake stream needs not to have any leaks in it. So now you've got this split hose, which could have very well been as part of his problem with the stalling 6 times in a row in the morning till the thing decided to run. But I don't know. Yeah, it's real basics,
I think guys are
in and they start throwing parts and pieces at it, and you can't do that. And people need to gather up more information. I'm a big believer in, a lot of people like the Bentley book, and the Bentley book is pretty good for C900s. But what was nice about the Saab books is, I think their diagnostic procedures are a little better in there. Some of the Bentley ad-libs some of that stuff. It's hard to say. I've made, you make tons of errors when you're working on these cars till you figure things out, and you work a system, and then you get better at it. I mean, I messed up a lot of times.
Guys are always looking for more power. I love to ask this question of grizzly old mechanics like you, and I hope you take that as a compliment. What's the best way for me to boost some horsepower?
Well, I mean, there's people selling, jazzed up APC boxes, and you can raise your fuel pressure and this and that, and you can change the exhaust system. I mean, we talked privately about this, but I'm a big fan of Trionic 5 in a C900. I mean, it makes a wonderful car. You have a car that you turn the key and it goes crank, boom, starts up and sits there and purrs, cold, hot, or indifferent. No idle issues, none of this nonsense. But if you don't go that route, you can go, if it's a turbo running a 2.5 bar fuel pressure regulator, switch it to a 3 bar. That'll give you a little richer mixture. That alone will give you a little bit of more horsepower. You open up the exhaust system a little more. You knock the guts out of your catalytic converter. It might help a little bit. But that's illegal, so we won't do that unless it's a classic car and you got a classic tag, that sort of thing. But I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. It's just a matter of what you want to do. But you can take a bone stock 2-liter Saab turbo motor and put Trionic 5 on it, and with just a tune, the guys like Jordan Pagano and Mike DiGiorgio, they can give you 200, 225 horsepower at the wheels.
Oh, wow.
Stock motor, and you're not going to make that real easy otherwise. And the power is much more linear. I mean, it's there. You don't have the little glitchy and the hesitation when the boost comes off and on and that sort of thing. It's just you have to drive one to realize that what have you been missing all this time.
So for C900 owners, let me ask you this: how difficult is that T5 conversion?
Well, okay, take this guy here, me. I'm a trying example. I mean, I knew it existed. I've known Jordan Pagano for a number of years.
Okay.
There's Jeff Henderson, and they were playing with it a while ago, a long time ago. I started getting interested in it. I did a T5 from scratch. I found a Saab 9. I find a new generation T5 factory book, just for the Trionic 5 thing, which had a lovely wiring diagram in it and some basic explanation of things. I scrounged all the junkyard components. I took a new Gen 900 harness, cut it up, lengthened a few things, did that. I got a crank sensor kit from Dennis Lynn out in the West Coast. I'm sure you guys know his name or have run into Dennis. A lot of people
seen it.
Anyhow, I used that. I horsed around for a week or so, and I like to be neat, so I kept changing things around until it suited me. But I put that car together and turned the key, and it started.
Wow!
Like I was amazed, and I did it with a normally aspirated car. So the basic ECU was not quite right, but yet it ran and drove around a block. And then I got I'll drop another name, Paul Havernack, who hangs out with Jeff Henderson a lot. They're both in my area of town, so to speak. They were doing some rudimentary working with T5 tuning, and they dialed the thing in a little better. And then I ran that car. I hill climbed that car when I rejoined the hill climbing thing after a 40-year absence. In 2012, I hill climbed that car, and then the following year, it was a 2-1 motor, so it had the higher compression ratio. But the following year, I put a small turbo on it, a TE05, a Mitsubishi. And, we tuned it again, and in the same event, I dropped, I think, 22 or 26 seconds.
Wow!
So I was making pretty much horsepower. It was a neat little combination. Other people looked at the car. I had taken it up to Euro parts when they were still existing. Jordan Pagano and some of the guys drove it, played with it, and it was just a lot of fun. And
so
the red car today red car is about 4 versions into that now. The red car is it's like 300 horsepower at the wheels. It's a little different animal, but anyway, I talk too much. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm surprised we haven't had more people jumping in here to ask questions about their cars. And then Tanya just speaks up with, I have a 92 900 auto, great shape. Any specific issues to the automatic I should look out for? Are there parts I should look out for, hard to find, in anticipation of common problems? Well, the first problem is it's an automatic, but that's my opinion.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I've had some automatics. I bought a couple of cars. Well, this 2-1 that I was talking about that I later converted, that was a 93 2-1 automatic S. I bought it with like 70-some thousand miles. Drove it as an automatic, and it was okay. 140 horsepower or whatever. But the automatic transmissions, get somebody to change the oil in the trans once for you. The other thing that I see people do every once in a while is they start fooling around with the throttle cable for the automatic transmission, which is basically a downshift cable.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to do this and now, and that basically changes line pressure in the transmission, and you can adjust that way out of whack and make more trouble for yourself. But you know, if you put decent clean fluid in them. Oh, the other thing with automatics, they don't only use one fluid. If you're really new to the car, the automatic transmissions, the differential does indeed take gear oil in it, like 90 weight gear oil. And it's a separate drain plug and a separate fill plug. And a number of those, they used to, there are two automatics. It's a BW35 and then the later is a BW37. They had a habit of the gear oil would somehow mitigate through double seals and into the automatic part of the thing with the ATF fluid in, and it would screw up the ATF fluid, but it also would leak a lot of the oil out of the differential, and you would ruin both the differential mostly, but occasionally you'd also ruin the automatic. So, you know, find somebody who's smart enough to find that there's two areas that get filled. The differential has a fill plug and a drain plug. Check it. Maybe drain it, put the proper stuff in it, and then drain the automatic. And then you won't get everything out of the automatic because some of it's left in the torque converter. But you can do like you do with the 9.5s and the 9.3s with the Asian Warners. You know, you can, you know, get 4 quarts out of the thing and refill it 4 quarts, run it a little bit, drain it again, so you get some more old oil out along with new oil, and do that once or twice and flush them. But an automatic, when it still works, it's good. If it starts not shifting, or if you, every once in a while the reverse band will break and they won't back up. I don't know if it's worth repairing them anymore. I did a few years and years ago, and then it was hit and miss. The best guys who did automatic transmissions was Erickson Industries in Connecticut. And they used to sell rebuilt, and even those, they would sell them, and occasionally you'd plug one in a guy's car, and it didn't work. You know, and then they'd send you another one and pay you for your time and material. So, but nice. If you own an automatic, get those fluids checked. Make sure you figure it out. That's the big thing. And start from there, and then find a mechanic that understands your car. And if you can't, then you got to keep asking questions from everybody else. But
well, that's what the community's for, right? That's
yeah, that's right. I mean, there's people. There's got to be a couple. There's got to be a bunch of good shops out there yet. I don't know them all because I'm only in this area, you know, and I'm old and worn out. But there's a lot of people who do that stuff.
All right, guys. I know some of you people have got a problem with your car, so use that chat window and let's put Gary to the test here. Maybe he can solve your problem. Mark, have you had any recurring issues with yours?
I've had a couple issues I've dealt with over time. One being the throttle body on my 9.5. I had gone through where I had to replace some gaskets with the intake manifold and the turbo, and ended up having some performance issues when it would start. It would just run rough, and I found out that there was actually a lot of carbon and gunk buildup in the throttle body. I ended up taking the throttle body off the engine and completely like cleaning it inside and out. I think mainly there was a lot of buildup in the main throat of the throttle body, right around where the butterfly is. And I remember, you know, using a fair share of brake clean and brushing everything out manually, and that seemed to clear up that. And then when I put it back in the car, it ran great. So I have seen, you know, buildup on the throttle bodies on those generation cars cause issues as well. So definitely cleaning the throttle body does help.
You're talking to C900 now, throttle body, right?
No, this is in my 2005 9.5.
Okay, well, I haven't cleaned my throttle bodies in my 9.5s, but I've replaced one or two, but I haven't cleaned them much. But the C900s do that too. You'll get all kinds of muck in the throttle bodies. A lot of times you clean that out, and that cures a lot of your AIC and your idle problems too. So.
Yeah, especially when you've got the turbo and you get blow by and a little oil accumulates up in there. And
you know.
So, hey, so let me throw this one on the table for you guys to hash over. I was just reading on another site the other day, a very outspoken debate about Seafoam. What's your thinking on that, Gary?
I've used it once or twice. It's pretty scary at first. basically on most motors, you basically you got a can and you feed this stuff in. I've never mixed it with the gas. I think that's that's probably not worth it. That's like a lot of other stuff. But that's supposed to clean a lot of carbon out. So on a C900, you would basically you pull one of the intake pipes off, one of the rubber hoses off, and you would feed it through a little funnel, and you'd keep trickling in while you're running, and you sort of had to crank the idle up real good. If I want to have increased idle for test purposes, I take a tie strap, and you open your throttle up to the throttle stop, and you stick the tie strap in there, and voila, now you have 1,500 RPM, 2,000 RPM, and you pull the tie strap out, and you're back to where you were, and you didn't change anything. But the Seafoam, you dump it in, and it starts smoking black and carrying on.
Yep.
And you think, my God, it's blown up. But it apparently cleans stuff out. But like I said, I've used it a couple times, but you don't want the customer around when you do it. You'll freak them out. And mixing it with the gas probably works, but it's so diluted by doing that. You'll see a bunch of carbon in the intake runners and stuff.
I've actually done that.
I haven't done that in years.
You've done that, Mark? You've done the Seafoam treatment?
So on the 2005 ARC back again, we were at this clinic at a Sears out in Charlottesville, and I had gone and bought this can of Seafoam, and they actually came with a tube that you can put into the intake, one of the intake pipes, and you loosen up one of the clamps, and you shove that little spray nozzle in there, and you just hold the can and you go ahead and spray it in, and essentially plumes of white smoke dumping out of the exhaust. I actually pulled my car away in a remote part of the parking lot, and I'm glad I did, because it was like a scene out of Halloween somewhere, where it's just like white smoke covering the entire area. But I actually did that, and I noticed immediately an improvement in how well the car is running. Of course, I was still going through my paces of getting the engine cleaned out and so forth, but that was definitely an improvement when I did that treatment.
Yeah.
How about that?
When I was working full time, Snap-on had come out with an arrangement. It might be 15, 20 years ago, where they were basically had this solution you mix. It was sort of like a detergent solution, and you would mix it in the machine, and the machine would feed this and gasoline through your car rather than using your pump and what's in your tank. And you would run that through it and clean it through the injectors, and it would clean the intake ports and all that stuff. And it sort of worked, but their equipment was, was pretty expensive at the time. It might have been $1,500 or more, but came with all kinds of adapters. You could hook it to anything known to man. And I just bought a bunch of the adapters and odds and ends, and being a cheapskate, I had a 5-gallon bucket that I rigged up, and I bought their solution, and I used a Bosch pump from an older C900, to run the thing, and it worked.
That's what matters, right?
But then it sort of went out of favor. You didn't hear it too much anymore that people were doing it, but it cleaned stuff out. But
so hey,
they're
Gary,
selling
Jess over on YouTube is asking, what's your opinion of using a catch can for an older 90 or 86 900 turbo SPG with oil blow-by?
Well, I have a catch can on the race car, and mainly because no matter what, the engine breathes, and if you plumb it turbo factory-wise, you're always going to get this little mist of oil in the intake, so it winds up in the intercooler and everywhere else, and I'm not a big fan of that. It's just sort of hard on the hoses, but you can use a catch can. If the car's on its last legs, you can do that. There's probably better arrangements that you could build. Look on some of this. Dennis Lynn on the West Coast built a real lovely catch can arrangement using a vacuum on it and everything else, and he basically catches it in a can and basically filters it and catches most of the solids and most of the vapor, and then he still draws a little bit through a vacuum hose back into the intake track, and he apparently keeps his intercooler and stuff a lot cleaner with that. But
You know, Mark,
I used to have we had high blow-by cars. Am I talking too much here?
no, I was just going to jump in. I wanted to ask, so should all of us turbo guys, new, old gens, everybody, should we be cleaning out our intercoolers?
Well, if you have a stock intercooler in your car, which you do probably, you don't have a big, you know, big giant cooler in the front, a DO88. That's what I'm thinking of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, take your intercooler off sometime and turn it upside down, and see how much oil comes out of it. I mean, I think you'll find that if you talk to the people who are really doing this, no, you want that intake track without all that oil in it. It makes a difference, and it tends to, it's sort of slowly disintegrating your hoses from the inside out. I mean, yeah. When the race car with the catch can system that I use now, I only run the car hard for 5 minutes at a time, that sort of thing. But even after a weekend, I'll empty the catch can out and I'll have a teaspoon of water vapor, and that's it, nothing. And it's well, the motor's pretty tight. I mean, the clearances are real good on it. It uses no oil and it's got a lot of compression. But I mean, you could clean them once in a while. It wouldn't hurt. I used to take them off, and I would dump raw gasoline into the intercooler itself and cap it, and shake it around back and forth, and dump the thing out, and then take an air hose and blow it through a while. And even if you didn't get all the gas out, it's still going to get sucked right back into the intake manifold. So what the heck is going to happen? And clean the hoses. But I think it makes a difference. But
well, guys, we like to keep these to about half hour, and we're about there. So I'm going to say let's wrap this up. Gary, I just have enjoyed chatting with you. You've got just a tremendous amount of knowledge. We're going to have you back down the road in the future, and I hope folks will join us with questions about exactly what's going on in their cars.
Well, I hope I haven't bored everybody with the stories that some of you heard 2 or 3 times, too. It's just one of those things. Well,
not at all.
Myself, too.
Well, you have good luck at that hill climb race, and we'll expect to check in with you in a month or so. How's that?
Yep, that's fine.
Who else is there?
All right. All the best. You take care, Gary.
See ya. Bye. Good night.
Man, there's a lot of experience right there. Mark, that's one of the things that I was talking with some guys today about, and that is, we're at guys like Gary are that information is just going to be gone at some point. So we need to capture all we can, and I hope we can do more of that on this program going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, we could try and get some of the knowledge here shared as much as we can. It's a shame there's not some sort of backwoods SAAB knowledge base that we're keeping track of, right? I mean, it's like all the fixes of the old guys used to take this and that. I mean, I know we didn't get a chance to talk about it early in the program, but the whole story about using the windshield washer fluid pump to prime gas into the carburetor, that was amazing.
We're gonna hold that one as a teaser for the next time Gary comes on. He'll tell you about how he used exactly that. Right, exactly. All right. Hey, we're going to run. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again next Thursday night. You can always watch the replay either on Facebook or on YouTube. You just search for SAAB Talk Live. You'll find us one way or the other. We've created a new SAAB Talk Live Facebook page. Hope you'll go there and like it. And Mark and I will be posting there periodically through the week. And, of course, the stream will be there, also on YouTube and other places. You'll find us, and I hope you will. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
All right, have a great week.